In the Philippines, a sport that once entertained millions is now a dark mystery. Dozens of men, all connected by their involvement in online cockfighting, E-Sabong, have disappeared. No bodies, no ransom, no answers. Welcome to VEILVANQUISH, where truth blurs into shadow. Today, we dive into one of the most chilling mass disappearances in recent Filipino history, the E-Sabong mystery. ESabong was a government-approved online cockfighting betting system, legalized in the Philippines around 2020. It generated billions of pesos monthly. Players could place bets any time, day or night, from their phones. It was convenient, addictive, and deadly. Our story begins in the quiet province of Laguna, in January 2021. The world was still in the grip of a pandemic, a time of uncertainty and isolation. For the Bautista family, their anchor was 34-year-old Michael. A security guard by trade, Michael was the quintessential family man, dependable, hardworking, and deeply devoted to his wife and children. He was their steady presence in a world turned upside down, a provider who worked long hours to ensure they were safe. His return home each day was a comforting ritual, a promise kept. But in the shadows of this ordinary life, a new dangerous obsession was taking hold. On one seemingly ordinary evening, Michael told his family he was heading out for a sabong match. He kissed his wife goodbye, promising he wouldn't be long. But this wasn't a trip to a dusty, crowded local cockpit. Michael was stepping into the digital arena of E-Sabong, or online cockfighting. This new form of gambling had become a national craze, a multi-billion peso industry that exploded during the pandemic lockdowns. It offered the thrill of the fight and the lure of instant fortune, all streamed directly to a smartphone. For many Filipinos facing economic hardship, it seemed like a lifeline. But this digital convenience masked a sinister reality, operating in a legal gray area with little regulation. Michael, like so many others, was drawn into its depths, but his promise to return soon was broken. The hours ticked by, stretching into a long, silent night. 10 p.m. became midnight, then 2 a.m. The initial annoyance in his wife's heart curdled into a cold, creeping dread. She began calling his phone again and again. Each call went unanswered, a digital shriek into the void, met only by the detached voice of his voicemail. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening, amplifying the family's growing panic. The man who was their rock, their constant, had simply vanished without a word, without a trace. As dawn broke, casting a sickly gray light over Laguna, his desperate family and friends began a frantic search. Following a tip from one of Michael's acquaintances about a common meeting spot for E-Sabong players, they arrived at a desolate, semi-abandoned parking lot in Santa Cruz. And there it was, his motorcycle standing alone amidst the cracked pavement. The sight sent a wave of cold terror through them. The scene was eerily still, but one detail screamed that something was terribly wrong. The keys were still in the ignition. It was a chilling tableau, a silent testament to an abrupt departure. He hadn't planned to be gone long. It was as if he had been plucked from his life in an instant. The police were immediately called to the scene, but the sterile environment offered more questions than answers. Investigators from the Criminal Investigation and Detection Group, or CIDG, combed the area, but the scene was unnervingly clean. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no discarded weapons. His wallet and valuables were untouched, ruling out a simple robbery. It was a professional disappearance. The location was a strategic blind spot, an area devoid of any functioning CCTV cameras. For the investigators, it was like trying to solve a puzzle with all the key pieces missing. Michael Bautista hadn't just disappeared. It was as if he had been meticulously and deliberately erased. Frustrated by the lack of progress and consumed by a need for answers, his family took matters into their own hands. They gained access to his phone records, hoping for any sliver of a clue. What they found plunged them deeper into a world of fear. In the days before his disappearance, he had been in contact with an unknown number. The text messages were cryptic, speaking of a clandestine meeting, a sure win, and a large sum of money owed. The tone was tense, urgent. Was this a negotiation for a fixed match, a collection of a debt, or was it a carefully laid trap, a lure that used the promise of money to draw him to his fate? These unsettling messages became the only tangible lead for his grieving family, a single thread to cling to as the official investigation stalled. They pleaded with authorities, convinced the key to finding Michael lay within the shadowy world of E-Sabong. But at the time, their pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears. They couldn't have known the horrifying truth that Michael's disappearance was not an isolated incident. It was the first chilling note in a symphony of terror, the first tremor of a seismic shock wave that was about to expose a brutal criminal underworld operating in plain sight, an earthquake that would shake the entire nation to its core. What began as isolated missing persons reports soon spiraled into a national crisis. At first, the cases seemed unrelated, but detectives soon uncovered a terrifying link. All roads led back to the multi-billion peso world of online cockfighting, or ESabong. By mid-2022, the count climbed to over 34 individuals. A chilling pattern was emerging, one that pointed to a coordinated, ruthless operation unfolding in plain sight, baffling investigators and plunging families into a nightmare of uncertainty. Each new case added another piece to a puzzle with no solution, only more questions. Was this the work of a single powerful syndicate, or multiple groups settling scores? Law enforcement scrambled for answers, but they were met with a wall of silence from the tight-knit cockfighting community. The scale and precision suggested an enemy with significant resources and a terrifying level of impunity. The victims weren't random. They were integral cogs in the E-Sabong machine, maciadors, or bet collectors, handling huge sums of cash, camera operators broadcasting the spectacle, and master game foul handlers who had defied the odds. They were insiders who knew the system's secrets, the fixed fights, the dirty money, the powerful figures pulling the strings. Their knowledge and their life-changing jackpots had made them targets. The disappearances followed a terrifyingly consistent script. Most vanished after being lured to licensed cockpits in Laguna, Manila, or Batangas, often on the pretense of collecting a big win. Grainy CCTV might capture their last known moments, a casual arrival, a brief meeting, before they were swallowed by the night. The perpetrators acted with chilling confidence, operating under the noses of security, as if they were untouchable. The only clues left behind were grim and calculated. Some left behind bloodied cars discovered abandoned on remote roads. The vehicles were wiped clean, but for the damning forensic traces of a violent struggle, a clear message from the perpetrators about their power and precision. But for most, there was an even deeper horror. The deafening silence. No car, no trace, no final message. Just a phone that rang unanswered. They were erased, leaving their families in a state of perpetual limbo, a grief with no closure. The nightmare wasn't just the possibility of death, but the endless, agonizing torture of not knowing. Police believe several cases involved uniformed personnel. In one CCTV, armed men in bulletproof vests abducted a man in broad daylight at a E-Sabong arena. Were these real cops or imposters? The NBI suspects a well-funded syndicate. Initially, the government, through its gaming regulator PAGCOR, embraced E-Sabong with open arms. It was hailed as a financial lifeline during the pandemic, and the numbers were staggering. At its peak, the industry funneled over $12 million into state coffers. Officials publicly praised it as a very good source of revenue. But as stories of the Sabongeros vanishing flooded social media, public outrage grew into a deafening roar, culminating in tense Senate hearings. Faced with a national crisis, the narrative shifted. In a dramatic televised turnaround in May 2022, then-President Rodrigo Duterte announced a nationwide ban. He cited the devastating social cost, a sanitized phrase for the rampant addiction, crippling debt, and the dozens of men swallowed by the shadows of the digital cockpit. The very industry the state had legitimized and profited from was now officially a public menace. But the order was a hollow victory, a political maneuver that came far too late. The criminal networks that flourished under the state's seal of approval were already deeply entrenched, their roots reaching into the very institutions meant to police them. They had operated with near total impunity for years. The presidential decree couldn't erase the trail of devastation. The disappearances had already peaked, and the ban simply pushed the multi-billion peso industry underground, beyond the reach of taxation and regulation, but not beyond the reach of its victims. The digital arenas fell silent, but the betting and the violence that enforced its rules continued in the dark. The damage was irreversible. For the dozens of families left in limbo, the ban offered no comfort, no closure. They had already lost fathers, sons, and brothers. The official investigation, despite multiple high-profile hearings, has yielded almost nothing. To this day, not a single mastermind has been charged in connection with the 34 confirmed abductions. Most of the missing remain unrecovered, their fates a subject of grim speculation. Theories swirl in the vacuum of official information. Was it a mass execution by powerful syndicates to punish Daya or game fixing? Were the men targeted for cloning betting websites, siphoning off profits, or were they insiders, silenced for knowing too much? Law enforcement sources hint at a conspiracy of silence, where potential witnesses are too terrified to speak. For the families left behind, only silence answers their cries, a constant agonizing reminder of a mystery the state seems not just unable but perhaps unwilling to solve. Theory 1. Debt collection hits by gambling syndicates. Theory 2. Betting fraud involving insiders. Theory 3. Government and police involvement in cover-ups. Some families claim they were warned to stop searching. How could dozens vanish in a country with security cams and a justice system? Was it a cover-up, a crime ring, or something worse? What do you think happened to these men? Let us know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe for more true crime mysteries that demand answers.